Welcome to Women at Halftime podcast, but not just for women, for you men too. If you're at mid-career or the halftime of life, our inspirational topics are not only fun, but also meant to help you maximize and write your next chapter. Right here with me, Deborah Johnson. Well, hello. It's wonderful to be here with you today. This is our once a month together, Greg and I together, for our Women at Halftime podcast. Thank you for being with me today.
Hi, everybody.
Yeah. And today we have another wonderful subject. And a lot of these subjects come out of our personal conversations as entrepreneurs and as our personal lives, as well as our business lives. And the focus, of course, of our podcast is for those, and a lot of my products are those for mid-career, the halftime of life, asking what's next. So we like to approach some of those subjects not only professionally but personally. And this one is entrepreneurial freedom, entrepreneurship freedom, which is the kind of the focus today, and the privilege and the cost. So, and both of us have been entrepreneurs. I've been an entrepreneur for a long time, and so has Greg. So this is it's a freedom, and the meaning of this is entrepreneurship freedom is the essential expression of individual liberty.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, and we talked about the original meaning, the French meaning from the mid 18th century, and I think you were the one that found this.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And so why don't you explain that for us?
It came from the French to swim out with a destination in mind. And so it was, it had the idea of breaking away and charting your own course, all with a destination in mind. Obviously, you're not going to swim out just in the middle of the ocean and drown. But we thought that was vivid language.
Yes.
Yeah. To break away, to swim out, to just chart your own course. And entrepreneurship probably at its essence is that you, for probably really good reasons, believe that you can deliver a product or service in just a little bit different way, in a way that would matter to the world. Right. And you feel like you could get rewarded for delivering that product and service enough to make it worth your while, right, to swim out, to chart your own course.
Yeah, I just thought that was a great illustration of just a vivid picture of it, to swim out. And there's a big push for entrepreneurial work, especially at, when you're asking what's next. Oh, I've always dreamt of doing this. Oh, I've always dreamt of, starting my nonprofit or starting my own business or going into my own, area. So that's why we talk about it a lot. And there's a lot of courses out there, a lot of talk about entrepreneurism, but I like to put a little reality into this. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that.
So in both of our cases, we had ideas that we thought could just be a little bit different than what everybody else had. Now, I was a financial planner. There's 100,000 financial planners, and the world, we've talked about this on this podcast a lot. The world tends to commoditize you, meaning they make you vanilla, they make you another grain of wheat or another kernel of corn, and the struggle is always, why am I different? And in my case, what I decided to do was to read about 1,000 pages a week, to write a personal newsletter on the subject, so that when I walked into a room with a bunch of other financial planners, I knew I was different. And I tell Deb all the time, and I'll tell you, the most important sale you ever make is to yourself. Yeah. You've got to become convinced that you are the most important financial planner in the room. In Debbie's case, she started as a musician, had climbed every hurdle, maintained this amazing mindset, and then the financial crisis hit and really shut down a lot of what she had booked, what she had built, and it was going to be a couple of years before she could get going again. And rather than pursue that full time anymore, she decided that she could continue that part time. When things settled out, and they finally did in about 2011 and 12. But in the meantime, she just found a passion for teaching others about the mindsets that are needed to keep overcoming the hurdles. And because she had become proficient at it, she knew she could bring a message to the self-help world of entrepreneurship that was different than everybody else, because she had gotten to a place where she was embodying it. She owned it. Nobody can talk about positive mindsets more powerfully than Deb can. And
nice.
The reason is because she finally became aware of the fact that she really believed that the most important sell was to herself. And then the second most important sell was that one day she just exasperated, said over coffee, "I can't stand it when people sit on their gifts and don't do anything with it." And I said to her, "Honey, you've arrived," because that passion is what drives her. It's to help you to no longer sit on your gifts, but to swim out.
Yeah.
To set a goal and use the gifts and talents that you've developed over the decades. And now at the halftime of your life, you've got the proficiency to use them, pursue them, and most importantly, provide them in a unique way to people who need them.
Yeah. And a lot of that came from me seeing people that would contact me, and the next year they'd contact me again. They're in the exact same spot.
Yeah.
And there's so much fear. There's just fear. And this, going, so we're going to try to dispel a little bit of that today on what.
Wait, I got a great line.
Okay.
Those people are always getting ready to get ready.
I like that. I got to write that one down. So it'll be in the article. Remember, there's an article with every single one of these that we do, our monthly main ones that we do.
Always getting ready to get ready.
Okay. I'll find that one.
I'm almost ready to start.
Almost ready to start. That's right. And you're never going to run the race if you're always just getting ready, right?
Right.
You're never going to dive off the
Sometimes in life, it's not ready, aim, fire. Sometimes it's ready, fire, aim.
Yes.
There's
a book about that.
Get started and then, see what needs to be tweaked on the way down.
Yes. Well, I'm going to talk about a little bit of the background now, which is really fun. I want to equip you a little bit in the head knowledge, because that's helpful in your mindset and in just the information behind some of this, because that's power.
Right.
And in the background of even what happened way back in at the start of this country, we had the Jamestown colony back in 1607. This is historical. And we just came through as we are recording this, we came through the holidays, Thanksgiving, and came through Christmas. And 1607 was the actually start, even though there were fur traders here and there were some, other people inhabiting the United States, the Pilgrims actually landed in 1620. And they were still under British rule, which meant that they were just basically paying back their journey, and all of their profits, everything went somewhere else. They couldn't own their own land. They couldn't own their own businesses, anything like that. So, and land was the key to prosperity. And we really saw this. I especially saw this in my family, because I come from a background on one side of dairy farmers. Land was key to prosperity. They wanted more land. They had to have more land for their crops, for their cows, for all of their animals. And that was prosperity. And when you couldn't own that in a new place, that wasn't okay with them at some point. So they They risked a lot of their livelihood, their lives even. And with the 1623 decision, that was the key when they came with all of these key points that they desired to their freedom and the freedom to be entrepreneurs. And our founding fathers then, with all of the freedom documents from the Declaration of Independence on, was based upon the faith they had, the Pilgrims, even though there were still the fur traders. But that was based upon that, on, that freedom of entrepreneurism and entrepreneurship in our country. And they knew what risks were involved. They came, even though they were able to work with the land over in the European and Britain and all of the European countries, it was different here. They had to learn what Indian corn and how to grow that. They were basically starving because they couldn't get their crops working, anything. So they had to learn. And part of that is the entrepreneurial journey, is just learning and equipping. So then they were able to work with others and combine with others and to be able to actually survive. And we're so glad, of course, that they did. But there's a great quote that we're going to spring off of today. The more equipped you are in any field, the more courageous you are with the actions and the emotional stability. So we're going to talk about a couple of those risks. And so now that we've, I just wanted to cover a little bit of that background of in this country, that, even those that were first coming to this country, they were looking to be entrepreneurs. They wanted to own land. They wanted to be.
The original deal that the Virginia company had cut with the Pilgrims was that they were basically going to be indentured servants for 7 years.
Yeah.
So they'd get here in 1620 and 1627. They would have sent back enough proceeds to have paid for their journey over here and some profit for the Virginia company. And the Virginia company was also hoping that they would have improved the land a little bit and set it up for ongoing wealth. But the Pilgrims, living in the spirit of the Reformation of the 1500s, balked at this, and they said, "Yeah, we'll share our profits, but at the end, we want the land and our houses, the houses that we built and the land that we're living on. We want." And they negotiated that. And, in some ways, they were the first entrepreneurs. They definitely swam out, right? And they knew the destination they wanted. And what they wanted was a chance to be free from both the King of England and the King of Holland, and to be, free from their persecution. And they knew instinctively that in order to be free, you needed to have secured your home and the land it was on. Right. And it's interesting how much of this goes back in their minds to the Bible. If you think about this, God, when he was fulfilling promises to Israel, when they were leaving Pharaoh's slavery, what he promised them was a land. They'd have his possession property, and they had to claim it. They had to build it. They had to protect it. But it's interesting that even in God's economy, land was an important part of really securing freedom. And so they couldn't have freedom from Pharaoh until they had a land. Right. And the Pilgrims seemed to pick up on that and understood that the land was important. And we're not going to talk any more about land right now, but we are talking about the freedom that they were pursuing. Right. And as an entrepreneur, that's the exact same thing you were doing, is you're taking the skills that you have and beginning to pursue what those are really worth.
Right. Yes. And in talking about the risks involved, we are kind of expanding there on going through the, again, knowledge is power on this as you're going.
Yeah, because I think you're going to bring up, one of the things that equipped the pilgrims is they knew they could be self-sufficient.
Right.
Debbie and I, if you were going to put us on a boat, send us to someplace with just dirt, we probably wouldn't make it. But they were coming from Holland, so they were used to cold winters. They landed and had some idea of how to cut lumber, how to build shelter. Of course, they didn't need air conditioning and wall heating like we do. They knew how to put together a shelter to brace themselves against a winter.
Right.
They had vague ideas how to farm, but they needed to be taught by the Indians in order to figure out what crops grew here.
Yeah.
And they needed to figure it out in a hurry.
Yes.
Because if they didn't, they would starve to death.
Yeah. And they almost did.
Yeah.
So, they almost did.
And, what was it? About 60-70% died within the first year?
Yeah. There were
it was
at least 50%.
Significant part.
Significant. Yeah. Just with, it's tough. And plus they've already made this journey across and, there wasn't enough, supplies then, even on the boats and everything else. So, well, let's talk about, because there are risks and hopefully not having the end result as the pilgrims did, but
so hopefully if you're pursuing an entrepreneurial dream, you don't feel quite as terrified as the pilgrims.
So, but we're going to talk about, which is a great one for you, the financial risk. And then we're going to talk about the management risk, which goes into our products and our production. And then we're going to talk about the emotional risk, because I think the emotional risk is not talked about enough. And that's a real mindset there. So let's talk about financial risk, because most people not most, maybe some people at mid-career, at halftime, or maybe even, a good amount of people, you're able to take a little bit more risk because you have worked a certain amount of years and you're able to say, well, now I can branch out. Maybe you're retiring from one job and you're looking at another. And some of that is dependent on the economy to where you feel it, where it's going. You may, because it's scary when you're in an economy that's rocky. And I think right now it is rocky. So it might, that might be even scarier for you to leap out. But talk about some of that financial risk and what it takes. I want you to approach this in that financial, because you don't always need a boatload of money to start. You can bootstrap, you have to be creative. And I really encourage people to start, if you want to start an entrepreneur journey, start a side business on the side, little by little by little. And I have I'll try to put that link into this article, because that's one of the best ways. It's very little risk and you can test the waters to do a side business. And in fact, speaking was a little bit of that for me as I started writing my first book and pursuing that, and then was able to branch out a little bit with some agents and, but it was, and I still work in the music field because I'll probably never quit. And so, but understanding that you can have those multiple streams. So what are the things you look for with that financial risk when you're kind of going into this?
So some things we've talked about before is that you first build your plan based on the worst case scenario.
Yeah.
What's the worst thing that could happen? And the worst thing that's happened is you have absolutely no sales in the first year. So that brings us to the whole idea of the side business that sometimes we overestimate our ability to sell either a product or a service. Or we overestimate society's need for our future product or service. And you need a kind of a safe harbor in which to build out the first models and see if you can actually do this. And that's why Deb pushes, started as a side business. And in the side business, you won't be afraid to start, The reason a lot of people are afraid to start is because they feel like they got to give everything up in order to get started. Well, if you think about the side business, you can set up your accounting, you can set up your prototypes, you can, write your first book, get your first keynote together, set up your service model, whatever it might be, and start thinking through, okay, who do I need to sell first? And the next step then is to identify what I call the low-hanging fruit. So let's say you're going to start a landscape business. Is there anybody
that needs their tree trimmed?
That needs their trees trimmed. And, get that first sale.
Yeah.
And then see, how good you are at really doing that.
Yeah.
And once you do one, you set in your prompter the next sale. So
right.
if you cut somebody's trees, they need it at least once a year. So do a good job with the first one, right. And then put into your computer to call them back in a year and schedule the next appointment. That means you got 2 sales.
Yes.
So you start that way and you build out and you try to create some momentum.
Yeah.
And not only momentum, but see if you can build. So just taking the landscape model, see if you can build a sales script that works for you, that's fairly easy to deliver for you, and seems to result in fruit. Second thing, though, is see if you can develop a service model that allows you to be as efficient as possible while doing a good job. And what I mean is, if the tree trimming job should take 2 hours, but you take 8 in order to, do it exactly right, it's not going to work.
No.
You need to, during those first couple, figure out, how do I do this right? And it's interesting, if you go back to the Pilgrims model, they had really penciled this thing out really well. And they were prepared, they were ready to go, and they were supposed to land late August, early September. But because of things outside their power, they ended up landing middle of October. And, that almost sunk their ship.
Yeah.
That's why you really need to make sure that you have the plan that you can execute. Yeah. So
really great points. And it brought up an illustration here of like our personal experience, that we have this wonderful tree trimmer that I'm the one that calls him. He doesn't call me every 6 months and say, which our trees, we are on a large property. We have trees that need trimmed. I am the one that calls him. Another illustration, I had our windows washed. We have a lot of windows in our house, especially the back. And it was very worth it for us to have these done like once a year. Do they call us? No, I'm the one that called them. And the last time they didn't even call me back. So this is an easy sale that, I'm going to pay you money to do this. So it's worth having that sort of prompter. All you need to do is send an email. You just need to keep people. They just need to know you're around. It's why I have that weekly newsletter going. People know, oh, she's doing something else. Oh, she's not gone. Oh, you do have a new book out, which, by the way, I do have a new book coming out. So you have all of those things coming up, and people, it keeps you top of mind. And that is so important in this. We covered a lot on risks on financial, but we
were really talking about selling to the low-hanging fruit.
Yes.
And making sure that when you're still trying to find your safe harbor, that you begin to build a little momentum before you cut all the ropes and sail off across the Atlantic.
And I think it's so important because I've seen people cut off all of the ropes, and they're out of business a year later. They're just right back to the same thing. And they're discouraged. So, know what you're dealing with. I mean, some people, maybe you have the total freedom to totally cut the ropes and go, but I've seen it a lot entrepreneurial type of businesses, which I've been in, is more of the arts, like the music, the speaking, the artistic. And those are, I mean, talk about a tough place to get, go momentum without side products on that. It's a tough one.
Yeah.
So anyway, okay, so let's move on so we don't have this forever podcast here, because I want to now talk about the management, about the products and the production, because the management of all those is a lot of work, and being able to prepare yourself, your mindset for this. Because I tend to, I do have a lot of products, a whole lot of products. So it's a huge balancing act for me to market those, because Greg is so good for me. And we have our morning coffee, which we're at the point of our life that we can do that. We weren't always able to do that because of your schedule. And because we had young kids or growing kids, and they were here and there and everywhere. But at this point we can. And your comment to me is that I don't have even a sales problem or anything else. I have a marketing issue of getting marketing out on all of my products. So this is a management, and I've kind of redone a lot of, even working with a virtual assistant this year, kind of redone my just system it's the same system, but I redid my sort of input on that, and which works. I put it in one of my courses, actually, A New Way of Doing Business. I should say that slower, A New Way of Doing Business.com, if you need to check it out. But as an entrepreneur, you are the head marketer, you are the head sales. It is really your responsibility. You can hire this out, but it is your responsibility. And analyzation.
Wait. You can hire it out,
yeah,
but whether it gets done is your fault.
It is.
So,
it is.
It's like you're the coach,
Mm-hmm.
and the players may play the game, but if they lose, it's the coach's fault.
Yeah.
And so we know a lot of entrepreneurs that think that they're hiring out marketing, and then they're not wondering why it doesn't work.
Yeah.
And the reason it doesn't work is because they become hands-off.
Yes.
That somehow they believe that a marketer that you hire is going to own your business the way you do. Now, you need to work the marketer, sell the marketer, explain to the marketer, what they need to be doing, explain to the marketer that they're not creating sales.
Yes.
Marketing that doesn't create sales is propaganda.
Yeah.
It isn't marketing unless you create sales.
Yeah. And it needs to lead somewhere. And the follow-up, I want to give a little illustration on that. Just I'm keeping these things are coming to my mind as you were speaking. And the marketing for some of my products, I had them automated, that a virtual assistant was doing for me on a program called Buffer, and putting them on social media. Well, I didn't notice one of the years until after the holidays that she had not entered any of the products onto my social media that were going out automatically. She missed like 3 weeks right during the holiday times, which were very important. They were very specific and very planned. And I didn't even notice this because I hadn't checked in on her. It was a busy time. I was working a lot and I didn't even check in. And I was horrified afterwards. And I'm thinking, I need to, if I hire another virtual assistant, which I waited a while to be able to do, I have to have the time to make sure I check in almost weekly to make sure everything's running, and if they're posting and they're actually doing. And she basically had some sort of lame excuse. And of course, she's no longer working for me. It was done there. I was done. That was not acceptable to me.
Right.
It just, you don't just not do the job. And so even when I have some website management, which I do on the back end, I do a lot of my own editing, but it is keeping up with that. They're very proficient, but I have to keep up with stuff I'm seeing, because they're not going to always catch everything. I catch it and they'll fix it, but I have to make sure that I'm at least up enough on that. So as an entrepreneur, you can hire those things out, but you really do manage it. Yeah, definitely. And or
supervise it. I mean, it's active supervision.
Yes.
People generally don't show initiative,
Yeah.
and they'll respond, maybe well to phone calls,
Yeah.
but they aren't going to anticipate and look for problems the way you will.
Right.
So you have to supervise it, you have to manage it, and it's got to be active.
Right. Right. I think that's a very important point. Yeah. And boy, I've had to really take that to heart too.
Right.
It was just sinking feeling to me, thinking, oh, it's disappointing. So, and now, well, let's get to our third little point on risk as emotionally, because I don't hear about this a lot on other people talking about this. And I think as we think about this and look at this, sometimes we compare ourselves to others. We see someone with all of these beautiful products and beautiful things out there, and we're thinking, oh, my stuff doesn't look quite as good. And I just had a vivid illustration yesterday of one of our trees that I had trimmed and trimmed and trimmed back, which is our tangerine tree. We have a little tangerine tree. And it didn't look as pretty as some of the other trees because I had a lot of sucker branches, but I had trimmed it back. And we didn't have a lot of fruit last year. And I thought, well, maybe it's not going to make it. We have so many tangerines on that tree this year that I've given them away. I mean, there's a huge amount of tangerines on that tree. It doesn't look as pretty, but it's very, very proficient here. What's the word I'm trying to say? It's very
Fruitful.
Yes, because
prolific might have been the
yes, that's what I was looking for, not proficient, prolific. Yeah, for all of what it's doing. And I think that is emotionally, we have to get beyond some of that. When we look at other products and other things that are out there, it may not always look as beautiful, but it really needs to bear fruit. And we've talked about this too. There's a lot of courses that we take or want to take, or that even we're selling. Is it going to really bear fruit for people? And is it going to be the right thing for them? And I think as a business owner and as an entrepreneur, I want to make sure that it's the right fit. I give away a lot of free material, but my courses aren't for everyone. So it is, you're not going to take one of my music courses if you're not doing it. I'm not going to hard sell you on anything that way. I'm not going to hard sell you on even an entrepreneurial course if that's not the way you're going. So that's important to realize, I think, as an entrepreneur, on some of that emotional. And the founders of our American story of, even going way back, they were fantastic plowers in their own land. But we talked about they weren't as good in the new land. They didn't know.
Yeah, they had to learn.
They had to learn. So emotionally, that's an emotional step. They had to learn or starve, basically. So, and what?
Well, I think where you're going with that is as if you're thinking about opening up your own business and you've got enough experience, expertise, the thing to be aware of is your plan's going to work until it gets tested by life, and then you're going to have to, be an ongoing learner.
Yeah.
And you'll be a lot like the Pilgrims.
Yes.
You get over here and you got to figure out how to grow corn.
Yeah.
So your expertise and your experience will probably help you problem solve quickly.
Right.
It'll give you good instincts as to what probably needs to be done, but there's no way you'll always be prepared for everything until you're in the middle of it.
Right.
And then you can build systems that will meet today's needs. And then what happens next? Yeah. The competition that creates new hurdles, and you got to build new systems. Yeah. So, but learning to trust your instincts that you've developed over the years, learning to trust your experience, your expertise, can give you the tools you need to build a plan for this year that will help you succeed this year. And that's the important takeaway. Sure, there's risk, but the key question is do you have the knowledge, skills, experience, expertise to assess those risks, overcome those risks,
Right,
and maybe
right.
even use those risks to succeed in places that your competition isn't.
Right, right. And this could be risk, not even in doing something totally new, but expanding on what you're doing now.
Right.
And that's important too, because some people think, oh, I need to start, I'm at the point in my life I could start on something totally new. But you could be expanding a little bit on something that you're doing now and a little bit of an offshoot. And that could work really, really well too.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So, well, great. I hope you've really maybe gleaned something. And I loved what you had just said about constantly learning, being a lifelong learner.
Mm-hmm.
And, when you started in your financial business in reading those 1,000 pages a week, you are a reader. I'm a reader as well. Listen, if you don't read, whatever you can do to just know what's out there, understand history so you don't have to make some of the same mistakes. I think that's very, very important, and listening to what other entrepreneurs have done. And this next book I have coming out very soon, as this is released, Stop Circling. It's called Stop Circling: Steps to Escape Endless Roundabouts with People in Roundabouts. But one of the things I talk about is just, that learning curve, and not keep going around and round and round. So, and all the steps in making that happen, and having that mindset of a lifelong learner. And there's a lot of principles in that book that help you through a lot of that. So, well, thank you all for joining us today. It's always a wonderful pleasure and always fun to be together. And you can contact me at any time, of course, through my website and a number of websites. But sign up for the newsletter, goalsforyourlife.com/newsletter. Did I say that slow enough?
Yes,
Greg?
you did. That was good.
Good. All right. He says I have way too much coffee before we do these. And you can reach me also at Deborah Johnson Speaker or DJ Works Music. I have a lot of products, but if you're on my newsletter, you'll get most everything. You'll hear about the new books. You'll hear about all of and get these articles. And I'm starting to put out bonus articles and not just articles, bonus podcasts you will want to hear. There's bonus interviews that I've added in some of these. So you'll want to make sure that you click into those, and maybe some extra stories that I'm adding in there too. So thanks again, everyone, for joining us today. And we'll look forward to being with you then next time. So bye-bye for now. Bye. Thank you for joining us. It is because of our wonderful listeners like you that we keep going strong week after week. We'd love it if you'd share and follow us to not miss a single show, and even write a review. You can also find all of our articles, products, and links at womenathalftime.com.